All right, let's talk about studying. We're going to dive into the real science of learning and unlock 3 super powerful techniques that can completely change how you study and make every single session way more effective.
But first, let me ask you a question. What if all those common study habits we grow up with, like rereading our notes and highlighting everything in sight, what if they're actually holding you back? What if there's a much, much better way to learn?
To find the answer, we're going to look at this incredible story. One where learning isn't just about getting a good grade. It's literally a matter of life and death. So, picture this. You've got a group of surgical residents, and they're learning this incredibly delicate, critical procedure, how to stitch together tiny little arteries. The stakes could not be higher. And researchers decided to use this high-pressure situation to run a little experiment. They split the residents into 2 groups. Now, both groups got the exact same training materials. They spent the same total number of hours studying, but there was one crucial difference. Group 1 crammed all their training into a single marathon day. Group 2, on the other hand, spread those same sessions out over 4 weeks. So, a month goes by, and they test everyone. And the results, they weren't just a little different. They were absolutely staggering. One group performed the surgery with skill and precision, while the other group, well, they didn't. Not even close. So what was their secret? What did this one group do that made all the difference in the world? Well, to understand that, we first need to understand just a little bit about how our brains are actually wired to learn things. You see, the secret isn't in what they studied, but how they did it. They were working with their brain's natural memory blueprint. So let's unlock that code. Okay, so when you learn something new, that information goes on a little journey in your brain. First up, it gets temporarily written down in a part of your brain called the hippocampus. Then, as you revisit that info, the connections between your neurons get stronger, kind of like blazing a trail in the woods. Finally, it gets moved to the big leagues, the neocortex, for long-term storage. Now, here's the part that blows my mind. This final, crucial step, moving knowledge into long-term memory and actually connecting it to everything you already know, it doesn't happen while you're staring at the book. It happens in the downtime, in between your study sessions, and most importantly, when you're asleep. So knowing that, how do we use this to our advantage? Well, that brings us to our very first technique, active recall. I think most of us study by just rereading our notes over and over, maybe highlighting a few key passages. And it feels productive, doesn't it? You see the information, you recognize it, and you think, yep, I got this. But that feeling is a trap. It creates this false sense of knowing something just because it's familiar. The information is right there, so your brain doesn't have to do any of the hard work. It's like thinking you know all the answers just because you're looking at the answer key. There is a much, much better way.
And that way is active recall. This is the simple but game-changing act of pulling information out of your brain, instead of just passively shoving it in. Every single time you force your brain to retrieve a memory, you're not just checking if it's there, you're actually making it stronger and clearer.
So how do you actually do it? It's easy. Instead of just rereading a chapter, close the book and try to summarize it. Use flashcards, take practice tests. Oh, and here's a personal favorite. Try to explain the concept out loud to someone else. If you can't teach it simply, you don't know it well enough yet. But what happens when you try to recall something and nothing? You hit a wall. Here's the crazy part. That struggle is amazing for your brain. Making mistakes, rocking your brain for an answer, and failing, that actually makes your brain more receptive to learning the correct information when you finally look it up. Okay, so we're actively recalling information now. Awesome. But how we practice that recall matters a whole lot too, which brings us to technique number 2, mixing up your practice. So the typical way to study is something called blocked practice. You just hammer away at topic A, and only when you feel like you've mastered it do you move on to topic B. It feels organized, right? It feels logical. But a far more effective method is something called interleaving. This means you mix it all up in a single study session. You do a little bit of topic A, then you switch to B, maybe even C, before you circle back to A again. Now, it's going to feel a bit chaotic, but trust me, there's a brilliant reason why this works. See, by switching between topics, you're forcing your brain to constantly load and reload different information. It has to kind of forget the rules for A to solve a problem for B. That process of forgetting and then retrieving, that's another powerful form of active recall that builds much stronger and more flexible memories. And this brings us to our third and final technique, the one that ties everything back to our surgeons. It's all about when you study. Look, we've all done it. The all-night cram session right before a huge exam. And yeah, it might feel like you're just jamming your brain full of knowledge, and you might even remember some of it for the test the next day. But for long-term memory, it's one of the worst things you can possibly do. And this shows you why perfectly. Let's go back to the surgeons. Group 1, the crammers, that was like trying to water a plant with a fire hose, just one time. But Group 2, the successful group, they were like watering that plant a little bit each week. That spacing, that downtime, gave their brains the time it needed to consolidate those memories and let that knowledge grow deep, strong roots. So we've looked at the science, we've gone through the techniques, and now it is time to officially reveal the surgeon's secret. The surgeon's secret wasn't just one thing. It was this powerful combination of all 3 techniques. They actively recalled what they were learning. They mixed up their practice drills, and they spaced it all out over time. They didn't just study harder, they studied smarter. These aren't just study hacks. This is a blueprint for working with your brain's design, not fighting against it. By using these methods, you can stop fighting your brain's natural tendencies and start working in perfect harmony with them. So, now that you know the real secret to effective, lasting learning, what are you going to master next?